My first reading this morning is a poem by Billy Collins, shared with you by permission. It's called Ode to Joy. Friedrich Schiller called joy the spark of divinity, but she visits me on a regular basis, and it doesn't take much for her to appear. The salt next to the pepper on the stove, the garbage man ascending his truck on his station on the back of the moving garbage truck. Or I'm just eating a banana in the car and listening to Buddy Guy. In other words, she seems down to earth. Like a girl getting off a bus with a suitcase and there's no one there to meet her. It's a little after 4 in the afternoon, one of the first warm days of spring. She sits on her suitcase to wait and slides on her sunglasses. How did I know? She's listening to the birds. Thus ends our first reading. My second reading, I guess without humility, was written by myself. And I gave myself permission to read it. I didn't have to go through any rigmarole. And it's called Ode to My Favorite Suit. I loved you, I said, to my favorite suit, in the secret voice that only I can hear. I loved you, I said, to the familiar black pants with their smart red pinstripes. I loved you, I said, as I peeled them off one last time, acknowledging the tiny moth holes that only I could see, remembering how tall and beautiful I felt in them as I led workshops and chaired meetings and walked through halls of church and school. I loved you, I said, to the sharp-fitted jacket in the voice that only I can hear, as I pulled it off, careful of the ragged edges of torn lining that tricked me each time I tried to find the unencumbered holes into which I'd slip my arms. I loved how good you looked, how smart I felt, and competent with my red silk blouse and your fitted pinstriped class. And I took you off so carefully, lifted the pinstriped pants, folded you each up tenderly, and pressed you both down into the trash. Goodbye, I said, in the secret voice that only I can hear. Goodbye, and thank you. When I became a parent, I started napping with my infant son. And I liked napping. I really liked it. I liked it so much that I never gave it up. Do we have other nappers here? All right. Folks who take a nap every day? Most days? Whenever you can get away with it? Don't be shy. I've been doing it for 53 years. I know that because my son is 53. Once I started, though, I was committed. And while I used to make excuses about it, now I am happy to report that science has vindicated me and all the rest of you nappers, confessed and secret. Naps are good for you. Especially, it turns out, naps of 10 to 30 minutes, which anyone can sneak into most days. The science says that those quick, time-limited naps can boost our memory, our creativity, our learning ability, and our energy. They refresh and renew. Awesome! I even took one before I started writing this sermon. But what I didn't read in the literature, but I certainly found in my experience, is that a short nap is often like pressing the reset button. Stuck on a problem? A quick nap can find you waking up with a new perspective or even the solution. It's a pause, a step away that offers a new perspective. And that's really, really helpful. How many of you have ever hit send on an email or text and then regretted it? Or maybe should have regretted it. Where was your pause button when you really needed it? Pauses are really helpful. Pauses that pull us back and let us see and hear the world or the situation a little differently. It doesn't need to be a nap. Anything that helps you move into a different space where the world is clearer, where you are more centered, will do. Years ago, I was sitting at a church board meeting, watching and listening to this board wrestling with a problem that was very complex, and very important. And they were going round and round and round, what about this, what about this? And they were getting nowhere. And it was getting late, and they were getting tired, and they were getting frustrated. When all of a sudden, the vice president of the board of the church, who was relatively new to the congregation, said, "Wait a minute, what does our church covenant have to say about this?" Well, first people looked at him like he had two heads. But we all stopped, closed our eyes, and recited their church covenant softly to ourselves. It may sound a little familiar to some of you. Love is the doctrine of this church, the quest of truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace with respect and understanding, to seek knowledge and freedom, and to serve humankind that all souls shall grow together into harmony. Thus do we covenant with our God and with each other. After a few minutes in silence, they resumed the meeting and knew exactly what they were going to do. The vote was unanimous. A humanist church taking an incredibly prayerful pause, opening themselves to the sacred, recalling the ultimate values that called and shaped their community, and that literally called back to them, called them back into covenant, called them home. And they knew then what to do. Pause. Life-shaping. And there are pauses that are sustaining all by themselves without any goal or purpose. Pauses just to be in the world, just to be in our skin, present, aware, receiving. It can be hard to take them when so much of our time is scheduled. But they hold moments of joy in the waiting. Moments of joy in the waiting. Pauses scattered throughout our days, containers of joy. the poet, noticed. Friedrich Schiller called joy the spark of divinity, but she visits me on a regular basis, and it doesn't take much for her to appear. The salt next to the pepper on the stove, the garbage man ascending his station on the back of the moving garbage truck, or I'm just eating a banana in the car and listening to Buddy Guy. In other words, she seems down to earth, like a girl getting off a bus with a suitcase, and there's no one there to meet her. It's a little after 4 in the afternoon, one of the first warm days of spring. She sits on her suitcase to wait and slides on her sunglasses. How did I know she's listening to the birds? Joy, says Billy Collins, is down to earth, present, accessible, like sitting for the moment and listening to the birds. I think he's right. We are often in a hurry to move forward, keep on moving forward, never turning back, as the song goes. But what do we need to keep on moving forward without turning back? Really moving, really forward. The Bible story of Lot's wife is a warning. You may know the story. Lot and his wife lived in Sodom, which was full of all kinds of nastiness. God had decided to destroy the city, but spare Lot and his family who were righteous. And Lot was told to quickly gather up his wife and daughters and flee the city, never looking back. To save his family and his own life, he hurriedly gathered them all up and told them they had to flee immediately because the city that they had lived in their whole lives and had been their home was about to be destroyed. He did also tell them God's warning not to look back. Neither he nor God gave his wife a chance to say goodbye, physically or even emotionally. Scripture tells us, "Then the Lord rained Sodom and Gomorrah sulfur and fire from the Lord out of heaven, and he overthrew those cities and all the plain and all the inhabitants of the cities and what grew on the ground. But Lot's wife behind him looked back, and she became a pillar of salt." Genesis. No one had given Lot's wife a chance to absorb what was happening to her, even mentally say goodbye to the place and the people she had known her whole life. Can you imagine what that must have been like for her? Yes, there were problems with the city and its people, and maybe she really was glad to get the heck out of there, out of the villainy and the misery, but to separate and lose them all suddenly, in their entirety, the good and the bad, that was huge. Lot's wife needed a pause, one that would give her some closure, allowed a normal process of grieving to begin, a pause to mourn and release that would allow her to keep on moving forward meaningfully. It's only human, not something to be ashamed of or punished for. We all need to pause, grieve, and release before we can move forward. It is part of being human. We may be grieving losses of things, people, places that we loved, or we may be grieving the things for which we longed and hoped that now will never come to pass. Never will. Without that pause and release, we will always be looking back, still tethered, unsatisfied, attached attached to the longing that went unmet. I loved you, I said, to my favorite suit, in the secret voice that only I can hear. I loved you, I said, to the familiar black pants with their smart red pinstripes. I loved you, I said, as I peeled them off one last time, acknowledging the tiny moth holes so small only I could see them, remembering how tall and beautiful I felt in them as I led workshops and chaired meetings and walked through the halls of church and school. I loved you, I said, to the sharp-fitted jacket, in the voice only I can hear, as I pulled it off, careful of the ragged edges of torn lining that tricked me each time I tried to find the unencumbered armholes into which I'd slipped my arms. I loved how good you looked, how smart I felt, and competent with my red silk blouse and your fitted pinstripe class. And I took you off so carefully, lifted the pinstripe pants, folded you each up tenderly, and pressed you both down into the trash. Goodbye, I said, in the secret voice that only I can hear. Goodbye, and thank you. And I will tell you, my friends, in that moment of acknowledgement, recognition, and authentic release, there was joy. There was joy for what I had had and gratitude. Deep gratitude for all the wonderful ways I had walked in the world, giving, receiving, learning, loving. There was no need to hang on, no need to look back. What I had had was real, and it was over. It was past. The pause was full and complete. I was moving forward. We are living in tumultuous times. High stress. Uncertainty frames our country, our world, and often our individual lives. And yesterday's incident of the shooting of the candidate for president just adds to that anxiety. It can be unnerving, scary even. In the face of uncertainty and often a sense of helplessness that is coupled with an overbearing sense of responsibility. And then we hear the inner voice pushing. Don't just stand there, do something, anything. I know the feeling. I've lived it. But that's not wisdom. My good friend and colleague, Kirk Byron Jones, writes, being overburdened is no secret pathway to spiritual maturity. Being overburdened is no secret pathway to spiritual maturity. The secret to wisdom, to spiritual maturity, to mental health, and I am convinced to happiness, is in the pauses that let in joy and wisdom. Can you stop right now? Whatever's running in your head, in your body, can you stop right now and feel it? No hurry, no hurry. Linger in the pause. Joy, the spark of the divine, it's here. It's here. Let it in. Let it in. the pauses that let us feel wonder and fullness of all that we are, let them in. We live awash in blessings so amazing and magical because when the truth be told, we didn't make them and we don't deserve them. It has nothing to do with deserving. They just are. Our lives gifted to us with the capacity to love. The capacity to love. Gifted to us. Just pause with wonder. My. When we pause and allow the joy to be felt and the grief and the wonder, we are reminded in our hearts and our very being that we are part of a larger whole, beloved and precious, and we become kinder. We need those things. We need them now for the sake of the world and for the sake of our very own souls. May it be so. Blessed be. Amen.